Since the dawn of civilization, humanity has looked to the heavens for meaning, searching for the origin of our power, our suffering, and our purpose. Among the oldest of these stories, carved into the clay of ancient Sumer over 5,000 years ago, lies a tale so profound it echoes through nearly every culture that followed. It is the story of two divine brothers, ENKI and ENLIL, whose rivalry would define not only the fate of the gods, but the destiny of mankind itself. This is not merely a myth, it is a reflection of something ancient that still stirs within us, the eternal struggle between freedom and control, creation and authority, intuition and law. Every society, every individual carries this battle within, the voice that whispers, "Go beyond the limits," and the other that warns, "Do not disturb the order." The Sumerians saw their gods not as distant deities, but as forces woven into the very structure of existence, cosmic principles that shaped both heaven and earth. Enki, the wise lord of the waters, was the bringer of insight and invention. Enlil, the lord of air and command, was the keeper of structure and divine order. Together they formed the heartbeat of civilization and the tension that keeps it alive. To understand their story is to look into the mirror of our own consciousness. For what began as a myth about gods becomes over time a revelation about humanity itself, how knowledge can liberate or destroy, how power can protect or enslave. The tale of Enki and Enlil is not just the oldest story of creation, it is the oldest story of us. At the heart of Sumer's oldest myths lies a question that never truly died. What is the true nature of divine power? And who deserves to hold it? The story of Enki and Enlil is more than a tale of gods. It is a reflection of the two primal currents that flow through every world, every civilization, and every human heart. One seeks to expand, to know, to shape. The other seeks to preserve, to order, to protect. When these forces move in harmony, creation flourishes. When they collide, the world trembles. Enki, lord of the Abzu, the deep waters beneath the earth, was the god of wisdom, craft, and life itself. From his domain rose the rivers, the seeds of invention, and the spark of human consciousness. He represented the fluid mind, adaptable, intuitive, ever-searching. His essence was the whisper of inspiration that drives the artist, the scientist, the dreamer. To follow Enki is to believe that knowledge is a sacred birthright, that humanity was meant to evolve and take part in the creative act of the gods. Enlil, on the other hand, reigned over the skies. He was the breath of command, the power that holds the heavens in place. To the Sumerians, he was the very structure of divine law, the voice that declared order from chaos. Through Enlil came kingship, the rules that bound heaven and earth, and the storms that punished arrogance. To follow Enlil is to recognize that creation without discipline is destruction, that freedom without reverence becomes chaos. Between these two divine brothers unfolded the great tension of existence, the eternal push and pull between chaos and control, between creation and containment. It is the same dynamic that echoes in every myth since: Prometheus defying Zeus, Lucifer challenging God, the scientist questioning the law. In each, humanity stands at the threshold, torn between gratitude for the order that sustains us and hunger for the knowledge that might set us free. The myth of Enki and Enlil, then, is not just a story of ancient Mesopotamia. It is a mirror of the human condition, a drama of spirit and intellect still unfolding within us. Their struggle is our own, the battle between the comfort of obedience and the fire of awakening. The earliest whispers of Enki and Enlil come from the wet clay of Mesopotamia, from tablets etched 5,000 years ago beneath the sun of Sumer. On those tablets, the gods were not distant abstractions, but living forces that shaped rivers, skies, and souls. Among them, two stood above all: Enki, lord of the Abzu, the deep waters beneath the earth, and Enlil, master of wind, storms, and command. They were brothers, born of the same divine lineage, yet destined to stand forever at opposite ends of the cosmic order. To the Sumerians, Enki was Ea, the wise one, whose mind was as fluid as the waters he ruled. His domain was creativity, intelligence, and transformation. He was the engineer of existence, the divine artisan who brought shape to the unshaped. In the oldest myths, it was Enki who conceived the idea of humanity, molding mankind from clay mixed with the blood of a god, giving breath to thought and voice to creation itself. His symbols were the serpent, the fish, the flowing streams, all signs of motion, fertility, and wisdom. Enlil, in contrast, reigned in the lofty airs of Nippur, the sacred city of decree. His very name meant Lord of Command. He was the enforcer of divine order, the will that set boundaries and pronounced destinies. Where Enki's waters gave life, Enlil's winds brought authority. To him, the other gods bowed. To his decrees, even the stars obeyed. He was not cruel, but stern, the voice of the cosmic law that keeps creation from dissolving back into chaos. The ancient hymns rarely portrayed these brothers as enemies in the modern sense. Instead, they were the two poles of one divine mechanism, one expanding, one containing, one gifting, one governing. Yet, their balance was fragile. In the Atrahasis epic, when humanity grew too noisy and restless, it was Enlil who demanded silence through destruction, sending drought, famine, and finally, the flood. And it was Enki who defied that decree, whispering through the walls of a reed hut to warn Atrahasis, the chosen man, to build a vessel and preserve life. Thus, in the oldest flood story known to humankind, the first act of rebellion was not human. It was divine compassion. Later ages would echo these archetypes. The Hebrews would tell of Yahweh's command and the serpent's gift of knowledge. The Greeks would remember Prometheus stealing fire from the gods. Even in the occult traditions of later millennia, Enki became a symbol of enlightenment, the spark that defies tyranny for the sake of consciousness. Enlil, meanwhile, became the eternal guardian, the force that resists change, not out of malice, but fear of imbalance. Through the voices of the ancients, one truth endures. Civilization itself is the dialogue between these two brothers. Every law written, every question asked, every rebellion, and every empire, all echo their eternal argument. In understanding them, we do not just study myth. We remember the oldest conversation of all, the one between freedom and order, wisdom and power, water and wind. The story of Enki and Enlil is far more than a myth of ancient gods. It is the oldest reflection of a conflict that lives inside every human being. The Sumerians, though surrounded by temples and rituals, were ultimately describing the inner landscape of the mind and the heart. For them, the gods were not distant deities watching from the heavens. They were archetypal forces moving through every breath of existence. Enki, Lord of the Waters, embodies the flowing nature of intuition, adaptable, creative, uncontainable. Water was his element because knowledge, like water, always seeks to move, to spread, to awaken life wherever it touches. He is the impulse that drives us to question, to imagine, to build. He whispers in the inventor's dream, the artist's brushstroke, the scientist's sudden insight. Whenever a human being says, "What if?" that voice belongs to Enki. Enlil, on the other hand, is the wind that defines shape. He governs boundaries, structure, and divine law, the invisible framework that holds the world together. The wind cannot be seen, yet its order can be felt in the patterns it creates. Enlil's power represents discipline, purpose, and the need for stability. He speaks through conscience, tradition, and the moral codes that hold societies together. Whenever we say, "This must be preserved," we echo Enlil's command. But when these forces fall out of balance, the myth becomes tragedy. When Enki's curiosity overruns restraint, chaos is born. Knowledge without wisdom, technology without ethics, desire without compassion. When Enlil's order grows rigid, life becomes confined. Law without love, obedience without meaning. Both extremes distort the original harmony that the gods once represented. And so, the myth of Enki and Enlil mirrors our personal lives. Each decision we make, no matter how small, is a dialogue between these two divine impulses. When we take a creative risk, we awaken Enki. When we enforce a boundary, we channel Enlil. The key is not to silence one or worship the other, but to let them coexist, the flowing water guided by the shaping wind. In moments of innovation, Enki whispers, "Create freely." In moments of reflection, Enlil reminds us, "Create responsibly." Together, they teach the sacred rhythm of existence, expansion and containment, inspiration and order, chaos and design. The Sumerians may have written about gods, but they were speaking about human consciousness itself. The divine conflict is not fought in the heavens. It takes place in our minds, our societies, and our choices. Every invention, every revolution, every moral debate is an echo of that ancient quarrel. To understand Enki and Enlil is to understand the anatomy of our own duality. the eternal tension between freedom and structure that drives both the fall and rise of civilizations. It is not a story to be believed, but to be remembered, for it is already written within us. In the world of the Sumerians, gods were not distant abstractions. They were living laws, woven into the fabric of existence. To understand Enki and Enlil was not merely to know two divine names, but to grasp the very rhythm that sustained the cosmos. Everything, from the flow of rivers to the breath of kings, depended on the harmony between these two forces. Enlil ruled the realm of wind, sky, and decree. His power was the breath that commanded storms, the word that established law. He was the architect of divine order, strict, sovereign, and absolute. It was Enlil who granted kings their authority, who maintained the invisible structure holding the world together. To defy him was to invite chaos, to dissolve into the shapeless waters of the beginning. Enki, in contrast, ruled the deep waters, the Abzu, source of all creation and hidden wisdom. Where Enlil's word structured the world, Enki's waters nourished it. He was the keeper of the Mi, the sacred laws or blueprints of civilization. Art, music, language, architecture, healing, and magic. But unlike Enlil, Enki's nature was fluid, adaptive, and compassionate. He did not enforce order. He taught balance. In ancient temples, these two gods were not worshipped in opposition, but in dialogue. The priests of Enlil maintained ritual precision, reciting invocations that reaffirmed cosmic law. Meanwhile, the adepts of Enki performed rites of renewal and divination, calling upon water, dream, and symbol to reawaken divine wisdom. Together, these practices reflected the two poles of sacred knowledge: discipline and intuition, structure and inspiration, law and love. The mythic events mirrored this dynamic tension. When humanity was created from clay mixed with the blood of a god, it was Enki who shaped them, the craftsman of life. Yet when mankind's noise grew too great, disturbing the heavens, it was Enlil who decreed their destruction through flood. Still, it was Enki who whispered to one righteous man, Zusudra, guiding him to build the ark and preserve life. Thus, through destruction and renewal, the divine balance continued. To the ancients, this was not simply a story of divine conflict, but a lesson in equilibrium. Enlil's decrees maintained the structure of civilization, but Enki's compassion ensured its survival. Without Enlil, there would be no order. Without Enki, no progress. One sets boundaries, the other fills them with meaning. This principle extended beyond myth into daily life. Farmers honored Enlil before planting, seeking favorable winds and seasons. They honored Enki at harvest, giving thanks for the waters that sustained their crops. Kings invoked Enlil to rule justly, but they prayed to Enki for wisdom and creativity. Every ritual was a reminder. Existence depends on the sacred interplay between restraint and freedom, command and compassion, sky and sea. Even today, this lesson endures. The universe itself breathes through the rhythm of Enki and Enlil, the pulse between order and creation. When one dominates, imbalance arises. But when both are honored within us, discipline guided by understanding, intellect softened by empathy, we participate in the same cosmic dance the Sumerians called divine harmony. Though the myth of Enki and Enlil seems to unfold among distant gods, its real stage is the human heart. The tablets describe their conflict as a cosmic drama, yet beneath that symbolism lies a deeper message. The gods are mirrors of the mind. Enki, the giver of wisdom, the friend of humanity, represents the creative current that flows when curiosity meets compassion. Enlil, the guardian of law and order, embodies the structure that preserves meaning, the discipline that keeps chaos from swallowing creation. Together, they form the two poles of consciousness itself: expansion and control, intuition and judgment, water and air. Within each of us, these forces wrestle for dominance. When Enki reigns unchecked, we drown in endless possibilities, dreaming but never grounding. When Enlil tightens his rule, we become rigid, unable to grow beyond inherited limits. The art of inner balance is learning to let these powers collaborate rather than compete. Creation requires both freedom and form. Revelation needs responsibility to endure. The Sumerians encoded this lesson not merely as myth, but as psychology disguised as theology. To honor Enki was to cultivate imagination, empathy, and adaptability. To serve Enlil was to build order, ethics, and perseverance. Every decision, every thought becomes a small reenactment of their ancient struggle. To master this inner balance is to awaken what the ancients called me, the divine pattern that integrates wisdom with will. When you recognize Enki's voice as inspiration and ENLIL's as discipline, neither must silence the other. Their harmony generates conscious creation, the ability to shape your world with clarity and purpose. The true temple of these gods, then, is not built of stone or clay. It is the awakened human being who carries both the law and the light within. Imagine the world before history began, when the earth was still soft and the sky a living breath. You stand at the edge of the Abzu, the deep and shimmering waters that Enki called home. The air hums with quiet power. Beneath the surface, light ripples like thought itself. The priests said this place was where creation began, where the raw potential of chaos was shaped into the first forms of life. Here, in silence older than language, you begin to sense what the Sumerians meant when they spoke of the gods walking among men. Close your eyes. You can feel the pulse of the water, slow and rhythmic, not separate from your own heartbeat, but echoing it. For a moment, you forget the boundaries between body and world. The breath you draw in feels like the breath of the cosmos. This is the realm of Enki, the deep mind, where knowledge is not taken but remembered. Each ripple on the surface becomes a thought rising from the unconscious, offering itself to you. To receive it, you must listen without fear. From across the horizon comes another presence, steady, upright, commanding. The wind shifts, order enters the scene. It is ENLIL, the breath of command, the architect of structure. His domain is not the deep, but the air, the invisible web that holds the heavens in place. He does not whisper, he declares. And his voice asks a single question that is echoed through ages. What will you do with the knowledge you are given? Between the waters below and the wind above, you stand at the threshold. Enki's current pulls you toward curiosity, invention, the thrill of discovery. ENLIL's current calls you toward discipline, hierarchy, and the preservation of balance. One promises freedom, the other, order. To choose either blindly would be to divide yourself. The initiation is not a test of allegiance, but of integration. Can you hold both powers within you without being torn apart? You kneel and touch the surface of the Abzu. The reflection that looks back is not just yours. It is the reflection of all who have ever sought to know. You realize that knowledge is not a prize to be stolen from the gods, nor a fire to be hoarded. It is a living current, and every act of understanding alters its flow. When humanity first learned, when we built, when we questioned, Enki smiled. But when knowledge was used without wisdom, when pride replaced reverence, ENLIL's storm swept through the cities to restore balance. Now you see, both were right and both were wrong. Creation requires rebellion. Preservation demands restraint. The human task is not to defeat one god in favor of the other, but to become the bridge between them. To think like Enki and act like ENLIL, to dream and to sustain. As you rise from the waters, the first initiation is complete. You have seen that divine conflict not as myth, but as mirror. The storm above and the current below are one rhythm, the heartbeat of creation, and it beats within you. The story of Enki and ENLIL is not only a battle among gods, it is a mirror of the human heart. Every civilization, every soul, has faced the same choice that divided these brothers, the pull between compassion and control, between freedom and fear. Enki, the Lord of the Deep, acts from empathy. He sees the suffering of creation and seeks to ease it, even when the heavens forbid it. His emotion is curiosity, but also love, a yearning to help life reach its potential. ENLIL, guardian of the divine order, feels an emotion just as powerful: duty. To him, creation must obey the laws of heaven, or chaos will devour it. His love is stern, his fear ancient, a fear that unbridled freedom might unmake all things. And so the tension between them is not evil versus good. It is the collision of two sacred instincts. Humanity inherited both. When compassion overflows without discipline, it becomes rebellion. When discipline rules without compassion, it becomes oppression. In that fragile balance, entire epochs rise and fall. Across the ages, their emotional struggle has echoed through myth after myth. Prometheus stealing fire, Lucifer defying light, the scientist reaching beyond the limits of nature. Each retelling whispers the same warning: emotion without wisdom can destroy the very thing it hopes to save. Yet wisdom without emotion is lifeless, sterile, and cannot create. Imagine the flood that ENLIL sent to cleanse the world. not as punishment, but as despair. The order he built was crumbling, and he could not bear to see the divine pattern lost. And imagine Enki's secret act of mercy, whispering to Utnapishtim, guiding him to build an ark. That act was not defiance alone. It was compassion refusing to die. These are the twin tides within every human being. One voice says, protect what you love. The other says, set it free. Between them lies the storm that shapes destiny. To live consciously is to hear both, to let love give birth to order, and let order protect what love creates. When we understand this, the myth stops being a story from clay tablets and becomes something living. The emotions of Enki and Enlil move through us still, shaping our choices, our inventions, our wars, and our hopes. The gods never left. They became the feelings that drive us to build, to question, and to begin again. In the final analysis, the story of Enki and Enlil was never about victory or defeat. It was about balance. Two divine minds, each holding half of a truth too vast for one alone. Enki, lord of the deep waters, carried the light of knowledge, invention, and compassion. Enlil, master of the winds, held the law, the structure, and the discipline that keeps creation from dissolving into chaos. Between them stretched the fragile bridge upon which humanity still walks. Freedom and order, chaos and control, mercy and judgment. The ancients understood that neither God was evil and neither was perfect. Enki's gift of wisdom to humankind was an act of love, but also rebellion. His compassion defied divine order. Enlil's wrath, though often cruel, came from the will to protect the cosmic law and preserve harmony among the heavens. Each acted from truth, and yet their truths collided. It is in that collision that life itself evolves. This is the high principle of their myth. Every creative act must meet its counterpart in discipline. Every law must eventually be renewed by inspiration. Too much freedom, and we are lost in our own inventions. Too much control, and the spirit withers. The world turns not by domination, but by equilibrium. Even the gods must yield to the balance they embody. Across the millennia, this lesson has echoed in every philosophy. The Tao's harmony of yin and yang, the hermetic balance of above and below, the alchemical union of opposites that gives rise to gold. Enki and Enlil are not merely figures of clay and myth. They are the twin forces that move every thought, every society, every breath. They are the pulse of progress and preservation, forever intertwined. To live by this principle is to remember that knowledge must serve life, not eclipse it. The mind must be guided by the heart, and will must answer to wisdom. Creation without conscience becomes destruction. Authority without empathy becomes tyranny. The divine equilibrium is not static. It is a living rhythm, a continual act of adjustment, like the tide meeting the shore. And so, the story closes not with Enki's triumph or Enlil's defeat, but with their reconciliation in us. When understanding walks beside discipline, when love stands beside law, the human being becomes what the Sumerians envisioned at the dawn of time, a conscious partner in the unfolding of the universe itself. The story of Enki and Enlil is not just an echo from forgotten clay tablets. It is a living symbol, a reflection of the two great powers shaping every soul. Within you, Enki whispers, learn, create, explore. He is the curiosity that drives you to question everything, the divine spark that sees potential where others see limits. And beside him, Enlil speaks, protect, preserve, guide. He is the guardian of order, the voice that reminds you that power without purpose can destroy what it seeks to free. Human history, like the heavens above, is written in the tension between these brothers, between freedom and restraint, chaos and law, creation and control. Yet their rivalry was never meant to end in victory for one, but in understanding between both. To awaken is to see their conflict not as war, but as harmony-seeking form. It is to realize that balance, not dominance, is the highest form of mastery. When wisdom serves will and will honors wisdom, humanity remembers its divine design. So listen closely. The myth is still alive, breathing through you. You are both creator and guardian, the bridge between Enki and Enlil.